So question 31, just go through it, everybody. I'll put up the question on the board for you. So 31 is based on constraint relation concept. Okay. So we are having a block placed on this. Okay. And also having a massless pulley attached to the block. Now the thread that is used is going around another pulley, but just to clarify one more point, the other end of the thread, it's not attached to the pulley, rather it is attached to the support over here. So this end, you have to understand that the thread is actually attached it's attached like this. It's attached to this axle. So this is a fixed point where this thread is attached, whereas this end is like this. Okay. So this one is having mass m and this one is having mass 2m, and the pulleys are both massless. And as I said, you have to understand this, that this end of the string is fixed. And the thread is also massless and inextensible. Okay. So hope that clarifies what the question is talking about. Okay, I'll come to the other questions also. Let me finish with this. So now you can see that so on the 2m block there is tension 2T acting, whereas on the block of M there's tension T acting. Of course, apart from that there is 2mg whatever, mg normal reaction here. But then what you understand is that this one, if it has an acceleration A, this will have an acceleration A prime which is twice of A. Okay, so you can work that out by virtual work or by method of thread length conservation or whatever you like. Okay, but that's fine. Okay, so this is your constraint relation equation number 1, and then you have to just solve the remaining equations, that 2T is equal to 2m into A. This is for this block, and mg minus T is equal to m into A prime. That's for this block. Okay, and then just substitute the value of A prime and rest of it is simple. So solve equation 1, 2 and 3. So it's pretty simple. Just multiply this by 2 and solve it and all that. So I think you can complete it from this point. So Dhruv, hope you understood this question. Let's backpedal to question 28. So masses are 1, 2 and 3, and so basically you have to find the acceleration again in question 28 also. So anyway, hope this question is clear. Dhruv, No, Rakshit, we will not be doing spring relations today because it's not coming on the test on Sunday. I just want to keep it as a revision lecture before your test. Okay. Spring is actually very easy. There's nothing difficult about it, but it's just something different. So I don't want to confuse things. It'll just take a few minutes to understand, but okay. So Dhruv, this is clear, I hope. Yes, major test 4 will have. Okay. But like laws of motion is completed. Just the spring part, just a few minutes as I told you. So next lecture we will in fact be starting friction after completing springs. So no big deal really. Okay. We would have done springs normally today, but there's a lot of revision work to do. So okay, let's come to question 28. So we have one pulley like this and say another pulley like this. Somewhat similar, okay. So this is fixed onto a ceiling, whereas the first string which is going around that pulley, it's attached to the axle of this one, and on the other side it's attached to a block. So this block is my M1, and then of course we have another string. So let's stand. So we now have this situation. This is a block of mass M2 and this is another block of mass M3, let's say, okay. And as usual, this is a massless pulley. Okay, and the threads are massless. Massless, inextensible. Okay, same for this. Okay, now see, now that we are experienced in doing questions like this, now we will first just understand the direct thing, that if the tension in this string is T, then because the pulley is massless, then directly we can say the tension in this string is 2T. Okay, so that's one thing. The other thing is that this block, suppose it has an acceleration A with respect to ground, then this pulley will have a downward acceleration A with respect to ground. This pulley itself will be coming down with an acceleration A, and M3 being the heavier block, with respect to the pulley, if M3 is having a downward acceleration of, let's say, A prime, then in ground frame it will have an acceleration of A plus A prime, and in ground frame this will have an acceleration of, okay, this acceleration will be A prime minus A, and this acceleration will be A3. So this is all with respect to inertial frame. So now we have an option, we can write the equations in inertial frame, or we can write the equation in non-inertial frame also for M2 and M3. So if we make all the FBTs in inertial frame, of course M1's FBT doesn't make sense to make in non-inertial frame. So inertial frame tension 2T or T prime, whatever, okay, weight, and M1 is given to us as 1 kg, M2 is 2 kg, M3 is 3 kg. So we have 2T minus M1G is equal to M1A, because we are taking this one's upward acceleration with respect to inertial frame as A. So we have 2T minus G is equal to A. That's our equation 1. Okay. Now M2 and M3 we have an option. So one option is we can make their FBT in inertial frame only. So if I make M2's FBT in inertial frame, I don't need to include any pseudo force, but I need to understand that its upward acceleration A2 is going to be A prime minus A, where A prime is the upward acceleration of M2 with respect to the pulley P, where this one is the pulley P, this massless pulley, okay, or it is the downward acceleration of M3, but again with respect to the pulley P, not with respect to ground frame. So that is why in ground frame this one's acceleration is becoming like this. So this is in inertial frame now. Okay. Similarly, if I make the FBD of M3 with respect to inertial frame again, okay, but I'll write the acceleration A3 in ground frame as E prime plus A. So this is with respect to ground. This acceleration A3 is with respect to ground or inertial frame. Okay. Same with this one. This acceleration is with respect to ground or inertial frame. Okay. So that being the case, my equation for this will become T minus M2G is equal to M2A2. So we will now write that as T minus 2G, because the mass is 2 kg, is equal to 2 into A prime minus A. So this I will write as my second equation. Okay, and for the third one, I have weight minus that same tension, but so I have 3G minus T is equal to 3 into A prime plus A. Okay. So now you can see it's quite easy, 3 equations and 3 variables. You can solve quite easily. But before we solve this, now I'll also show that if we chosen the other thing, that we could make the FBD of M2 and M3 with respect to this pulley. So that would be a non-inertial frame. So we'd have to include pseudo force. But in that frame, their accelerations would be of magnitude A prime, upwards and downwards. But still we would get the same equations. Now, the setup of the equation would be different, but mathematically the equation would be the same. So thereby, in this question again you have an option. You want to go with inertial frame, you can do that. You want to go with non-inertial frame, you can do that also. Okay. So just first of all absorb these equations and tell me if there's any doubt in this. Okay. So Harpriya, hope this is clear. No, Hitansh, we cannot solve the question without writing any equation. Of course, we have to write some equations. How would we proceed without any equations at all? Yeah, so if we are doing the same thing in in non-inertial frame, okay. So if we were solving for free body diagram of M2 and M3 in the pulley P's frame, so that is a non-inertial frame which is coming down with an acceleration E. So in that frame, how would the free body diagram and the equations look like? So the non-inertial frame itself is coming down with this. So M2 in this frame would have an upward acceleration of A prime itself, okay, and the forces acting on it would be tension and weight, but along with that there would be pseudo force. So that would be M2A, this would be the pseudo force. And similarly in the same frame, if I made M3's free body diagram, so with respect to this frame, now M3 is coming down with A prime, okay, with respect to that pulley. So imagine your observer is sitting on this pulley which is there, and he is observing. So in his frame, this is going up at A prime, this is coming down at A prime. This is the situation now. So again, the forces by the external agents are this, but in addition to that there is pseudo force. और इस पे pseudo force का magnitude different हो जाएगा because mass is different, but the direction will be the same. So this will be m3a. That is the pseudo force acting on this guy. Alright, so now let's write the equations for these two. So the equations will become, for this one it will be T plus m2a minus m2g. That's the net upward force, so that is m2a prime. And in the substitute m2 as 2 kg. So you'll see, you'll get the equation T plus 2a minus 2g is equal to 2a prime, or that's the same thing as saying that T minus 2g is equal to 2 times a prime minus a. So if you compare this with above, this is the same equation as equation number 2 we had got above. And similarly for m3, we'll have the equation net downward force, which is the weight minus the sum of tension and pseudo force, is equal to mass into that downward acceleration. So 3g minus t minus 3a is equal to 3a prime, or that gives us the same equation we had written earlier. 3g minus t is 3 times a prime plus a this time. Take common. So it's absolutely the same equation. It's just a different way of visualizing the equation, but in this case it's no problem at all because directions and all are well known. So this is not a problem where it is compulsory for us to, write in inertial frame. We have the option, whatever we choose. You can see these two equations are same as these two. And now it's a matter of solving those equations and just solve for A and then use kinematics, because they've asked you the time taken for the displacement to become 20 centimeters, so that half AT square will be that time. Will be that displacement. Okay, so just make a note of these equations and now again the method of solving will be that you eliminate t between equation 2 and 3, then again eliminate t between another set of equations, maybe 1 and 3 or 1 and 2. So you'll get two equations which are independent of t then, and then you want to find out a prime, so or a or whatever, so eliminate a prime from those two equations and that's it. So one by one you eliminate the variables and you solve. Okay people, so hope the solving part you can do from this point onwards, or do you want me to help you with the solving also, Harpriya? It's clear now how you'll do the solving. Equation 1, 2, 3 में आप पहले tension eliminate करो, so you'll get two equations involving a prime and a, and then eliminate a prime. Okay, very good beta. So now we will so any question before 28? Anybody had some question before 28? I think couple of students had something, so I'll just discuss about that. 1920, yeah, Jenny, I'll come to 19. Okay, So let's come to question 19 and 20 from H.C. Verma. Fifteenth also, okay. Okay, so let's go back to 15th actually first, then we'll come back to 9. So 15th is that, again, see, in 15 what you have to understand is the reading of the spring balance will be nothing but that. See, what the spring balance does is it measures weight, okay, but it gives the answer in terms of kilograms, whereas weight is something in newtons. So that's one fundamental thing you have to understand about the working principle of spring balance. So for question 15, first to understand what a spring balance does. Okay. Now don't worry that it's a spring balance and we haven't learned about spring yet. Just treat it like an instrument, which it is. So what it does is that this instrument has a marker and a pointer and all that. So depending on how much is the weight of an object we suspend. So if we suspend an object of mass m, what happens is that this thing develops a tension, and that tension is equal to mg. So the spring balance, what it does is the spring balance and the pointer of it actually measures the tension T, which is mg. Okay, but the reading is in terms of mass. So for tension equal to mg, the reading it will show will be m, which will be T by g. Okay, so for example, if acceleration due to gravity is 9.8 and we suspend a mass of, let's say, 5 kilograms, the tension in the string will be 5 into 9.8. Okay, but the reading that it will show will not be that many newtons. The reading it will show will be 5 kg. So that is the working principle of the spring balance. Okay, now the problem is the spring balance fails miserably. Acha, I'm solving 16th, is it? Acha. But actually, 16th is also based, 15th is also based on the same principle. That's the same thing that a weighing machine also does. But instead of even a weighing machine, for example, so that one was 16, but whatever. Even a weighing machine, okay, it gives the reading for mass, but it does this by measurement of tension only, or you can also say normal reaction, because what happens in a floor standing weighing machine is something like this. You have a platform which is loaded on springs, and this thing is on the floor. So now if you place a heavy mass on top of it, the springs get compressed. So what is happening between that platform and that mass? This is what is happening. The platform is applying an upward normal reaction on the mass, which is balancing its weight. So this is applying a downward normal reaction, and this together is balanced by the total tension force in the springs. So let's write that total tension as T only. So it ends up measuring that total tension T, which is equal to the normal reaction, which is equal to the weight. So again, the same kind of thing. Okay, if the weight of the object is 5g or mg, whatever, then the measurement it will show, the reading it will show, the reading will actually be mg divided by g, or it will be that tension divided by g, or it will be that normal reaction divided by g. So it will measure it as mass. So the reading will be mass, though actually what it's measuring is a force. It's not measuring mass, because there's no way that instrument can actually measure the quantity of matter and how many protons, how many electrons. It can't do that. It's measuring mass by actually measuring what is the gravity's effect on that mass, which is mg, and then taking into account that g's value is so much, so it's giving you that reading. Okay, so which is why both these type of instruments, whether you take a spring balance from which you suspend a mass, or you take a floor standing weighing machine, which is looking like this, but internally it is like this. So iske upar when I place some weight, it actually gives you the reading of the mass, but how does it do that? It does so by measuring the contact force between the body of that mass and that platform of the floor standing weighing machine. ठीक है. So that is why both these instruments will fail miserably if there is some secondary force involved, है ना. मतलब it's very simple, like if you stand on a weighing machine, okay, but at the same time, you know, there is, let's say, some rope which is hanging from the wall, and you latch on to that rope and you apply a slight downward pull on the rope, you'll see even a slight amount of pull will dramatically change the mass that your weighing machine is measuring. So it's very easy to cheat actually. You don't even need a rope. If there's a wall in front of you and you just grip that wall slightly with your fingers and apply slight upward push on your body, you will see that the reading of the weighing machine will change dramatically. You can easily manage something like 10-15 kgs difference by applying minimal amount of force on something. Or if you take the support of a table or something standing here, you just put your hands on that table and push downwards on the table, you'll see that that dramatically changes the normal reaction between your body and the platform. So it dramatically changes the reading of the platform. ठीक है. So no, so it actually measures, हाँ मतलब that's correct Nikita. Actually what it measures is the force, in this case the normal contact force, and in this case the tension force. But then the reading it shows is not force in newtons, it shows force in newtons divided by g, so it shows the reading in kilograms. ठीक है, you are understanding the point? Okay. So now both these instruments will therefore fail very badly if there is some non-inertial frame or some secondary force involved. Okay. So you know, whether you are suspending a mass inside a, so if you have an elevator for example which is accelerating upwards, so whether you used a spring balance to suspend a mass or you put that mass on top of a weighing machine, whatever you've done, in either case you can see in this case on that mass, in the non-inertial frame, that mass is at rest, but that non-inertial frame is going upwards at E. So in this case there is pseudo force plus there is the normal weight and plus there is the third force, which will be either the tension in the case of the spring balance, okay, or normal reaction in the case of floor standing weighing machine. Okay, so in either case P or N, whichever will be, so in this case it becomes mg plus ma. Okay, so now this, it measures this, so it reports what reading it gives. It gives a reading of tension or normal reaction divided by g, so it gives a false reading. I mean, it gives this reading. Okay, so the reading in this case becomes m into 1 plus e by g. So it gives a reading, let's say this is m prime, so that's the reading it gives. So m prime is more than the true weight. Okay, whereas if the same box had been accelerating downwards, if the elevator had been accelerating downwards, then in this case the reading it would give, let's say m double prime, वो क्या हो जाता है, it would become m into 1 minus g by a, because this time the pseudo force would be upwards, sorry, 1 minus a by g. This time the pseudo force would be upwards. Okay, whereas if the elevator is moving but with zero acceleration, then it's showing the true weight. Understanding? Because in this case the pseudo force would be upwards. So another thing you can say is that it measures the apparent weight. No, the reading it will be in terms of mass, na beta. So see what is happening in either case, Somarup, it's measuring the tension on normal reaction. In this case the tension on normal reaction is mg minus ma. So now the reading is showing, which is, let's say, m double prime, is going to be that tension divided by the true by g, you know, because it's showing you the force but in units of kg. So how it's showing you the force of tension on normal reaction in units of kg? By dividing it by g. So what it's reading? It's reading it as m into g minus a divided by g. So it's reading it as m into 1 minus a by g. Whereas here it's reading it as this. So suppose the acceleration is 10% of, got it now? So that's why in 16th question what is happening is, it's saying that one time when the lift is accelerating upwards at a certain acceleration, your mass is something, your m1 is, let's say, 72 kgs or whatever. Okay? The other time when the lift is coming down but with the same acceleration, is reading the mass of, let's say, 68 kg. So then what is the true mass? So So it's very easy. You can just understand it this way, that this 72g is actually mg plus ma naught, whereas this 68g is actually mg minus ma naught. So if you just add these two equations now, you can understand what the true mass is. So if you just add equation 1 and equation 2, you see that 72 plus 68g is 2 mg. So the true mass comes out to be the average of these two. But it's the average provided the magnitude of this acceleration is the same as magnitude of this. Now, agar while coming down it's a different acceleration, while going up it's a different acceleration, then this formula will not work. So don't memorize the formula, understand the concept that while going up, the force that your weighing machine is measuring and therefore it's reading is according to weight plus pseudo force, because pseudo force is downwards, whereas while accelerating downwards it's weight minus pseudo force. So accordingly here in this particular case you can see it's becoming, because the magnitudes are same, so it's becoming the arithmetic mean of these two, so it's 70 kg. Okay, so sorry, in the question it was 72 and 60, but anyhow, so you'll have to take the average of 72 and 60, so that will become 66 kg. And then you can substitute that 66 back in this equation or this equation and you'll get the acceleration of the lift. Okay, so next we are going to do a question I think, where were we, 19, 20 and then 23. Okay, so anybody has a doubt before question 19, please let me know. Okay, Snikita, we'll come to this. So we'll do 19, 20, 23 and 24. Okay, this is the order in which we are going to. So question 8 also. Okay. Eighth is again a question where the language is what you have to understand for the question. Okay. Other than that, it's easy. So in question 8, what is happening is that now it's a bit of a funny question, so try to keep the humor thing at bay. Okay. So let us imagine that the bald person, poor fellow, this is his head. Okay. Now, as a raindrop hits, it's like a small spherical droplet. It's like this. So it's hitting with a velocity of v naught. Okay. And the moment it hits now, there is some kind of force that starts acting on it, like a normal reaction force. So that starts decelerating it. Okay. So what happens is now, by the time that rain droplet has come to rest, it's got somewhat squashed. Okay. Like this. So what was happening is that if this was the droplet, so its diameter is 2r, when it just came in contact with the surface of his head, so that time it was v naught, and by the time it stopped, this mass of water is kind of spread out like this, such that, that's what it's saying, that the displacement is half the radius or whatever, half the diameter. Okay, assuming equivalently that the drop covers a distance equal to the radii on the head. So it covers a distance of, that means this is spread out from 2r into some r like this. Okay. But by this time its velocity has become 0. So in going from here to here, if it has a deceleration of so much, now you can see that 0 square is v naught square minus 2as, where s is going to be that radius. Okay. So the rate of deceleration is going to be v naught square by 2s, which in this case is going to be your 30 meters per second whole square divided by 2 into the radius, which is 1 millimeter, so 10 raised power minus 3. So there's a huge amount of deceleration, as you can see. The deceleration is 9 by 2 into 10 raised power 4. 10 raised power 5. It's 30 square. So 100 divided by 1000. So this is the rate of deceleration. Now this rate of deceleration is coming from what? It is coming from the forces which are acting. So again, now if you examine the free body diagram of this, while it is in contact with the head, there is mg and there is this decelerating normal reaction, and that is creating an acceleration A. So we have to find, what do we have to find? We have to find the force exerted by each drop on the head. So that's equal and opposite to this, you know. So on the surface of the head, so this is the reaction force, no? The normal reaction force. So equal and opposite force acts on the head. So on the head, this thing is applying a downward normal reaction, which is the same as this. So N minus mg should be equal to ma. So that N should be equal to mg plus A. So this will become the mass, which is given as 4 milligrams. So 4 into 10 raised power minus 3 into 10 raised power minus 3 kg, okay, into 9.8 plus 4.5 into 10 raised power 5 in meters per second square. So you can neglect this. So you can say that it's almost 4 into 10 raised power minus 6 into 4.5 into 10 raised power 5 newtons. So this 9.8 is negligible compared to this, which is of the order of 0.45. So this will become 18. Sorry, this is minus 6. So this will become 18 into 10 raised power minus 1. So 1.8 newtons type of force. So you can imagine it's a considerably large amount of force, you know. But for a droplet which is of just mass a few milligrams, that kind of force is acting. So that's why you feel it, you know, when the raindrop hits your head. It's not something which is of negligible kind of effect on your body, you know. Yeah, so 1.8 is the answer. Okay, very good. So let's move on to question number, what are we doing next? 19. Okay. Question 19 is again based on little bit of, you know, it's little divergent from Newton's laws of motion, what we've been discussing, because it goes a little bit into the concept of buoyancy. So buoyancy क्या होता है? We'll just use the class 9 definition of buoyancy that you know. Buoyancy is the upthrust, okay, on a body submerged, okay, in a fluid, okay, and that upthrust equals to the weight of fluid displaced. Okay. So in the case of hot air balloon, okay, in the case of a hot air balloon, the fluid that we are talking about, in which the body is submerged, is nothing but air. So this is the fluid. Okay. So if this is the balloon, which is of volume V, it will experience an upward force which is called buoyant force or upthrust. Okay. This will be equal to the weight of air displaced. Okay. Now this becomes very large compared to the balloon's own weight, because inside the balloon there is helium, which is of negligible mass compared to air. So it's a helium balloon. So the balloon's weight is negligible. Its own weight is negligible. Okay. Okay. So this buoyant force, according to this definition, though we don't need it here, this buoyant force will be equal to the density of air multiplied by the volume of the balloon into G. this will be the formula for it, where V is this volume and rho is the density of the air or the fluid in which it is there. So it's coming from this definition. It is weight of fluid displaced. Okay. Same way, if we put this balloon under water, this will become density of water into volume into G. Okay. Now let's come to the question itself. So question 19, what it's saying is that we have two scenarios. Okay. In one scenario, what is happening is that this balloon is suspended a certain mass from it. Okay. And what's happening, that is falling down near the surface of the earth at a constant velocity. Okay. And there is an air resistance force also, which acts opposite to the direction of velocity. So it's falling down with a velocity v. Okay. But its acceleration is 0, because there is a combination of three forces. One, there is buoyant force. Okay. The other, there is also air resistance. Now about air resistance, it says this. It is given to you that the air resistance is proportionate to the velocity and opposite in direction. So we can conveniently write this as a vector equation, that this is minus of alpha into v, where alpha is some constant. So that is the instruction given to us in the question. We don't need to get into y aisa, q aisa and all that. We don't need to. That's not part of this chapter. It's just that the question is telling us that air resistance force is such that it is proportional to velocity. So that means its magnitude is some constant into velocity, but direction is opposite. So that's why I've shown you the direction of the air resistance force like this. Okay. So along with buoyant force, there is air resistance force acting upwards, and of course the weight of this object is there. So that is all acting on the system. So for the system, the acceleration is 0 in inertial frame. So we have our first equation, that this plus this minus this should be 0. So we have that alpha v plus buoyant force minus mg is equal to 0. That's our equation number 1. Okay, this is the resistive force. Okay. So this is the first part of what's happening in the question. Now in the second part, what's happening is we are removing some mass. So we are throwing out some of the mass from that block, or that basket or whatever, and as a result of that, the lightening of the balloon, lightening of the weight, we've lightened it. So instead of descending with a constant velocity, now it starts ascending with the same velocity. So we have cut out some of the mass, and this mass has become m minus delta m, suppose, because we've removed delta m. So remove delta m such that the same balloon now ascends at same constant speed v. So this time it's going up with the speed v, 0 acceleration. So what about the forces? So we'll realize first and foremost, the buoyant force will remain the same. Buoyant force in both cases is density of air into volume of the balloon into g. So that does not change. Okay. The formula of viscous force also doesn't change, or resistive force doesn't change. Resistive force ka formula is minus alpha v. But in this case, because the velocity is upwards, what is the direction of that resistive force going to be? It's going to be downwards. There will be resistive force of alpha v acting downwards. And of course the weight of the payload, or the weight of the basket, or whatever, this is now changed to m minus delta m into g. So for this, the equation is becoming buoyant force is balancing the sum of this resistive force and the reduced weight. So the same buoyant force minus alpha v is equal to m minus delta m into g. This is my equation 2. Okay, and better to write equation 1 like this, so that it will be easier to compare. Okay. So let's write equation 1 like this, that the buoyant force plus alpha v is equal to mg. So this is equation 1. So now just add the two equations. or whatever, subtract the two equations or whatever, and we can get what is required. Yeah, so what we can do is, no, sign will not be opposite बेटा, साइन तो यही रहेगा ना, बिकॉज इस डायरेक्शन हमने ऑलरेडी ऑपोजिट कर दिया है. अंडरस्टैंडिंग, वी ऑलरेडी, ओके. Okay, so now just solve equation 1 and 2 for delta m. Okay, so basically you will want to eliminate alpha, because b is given to us, v is given to us, m is given to us. Of course g is a known quantity, but the unknowns are delta m and alpha. Okay, so you have to eliminate alpha between the two of them. Okay, so from equation 1 you can see that mg minus b divided by v, that is the value of alpha, and that from the second equation is b minus m minus delta m divided by v. Okay, so now you can find out the value of delta m from here. V will also cancel out, you can find out the value of delta m. Or actually, if you see, you just want to find in terms of b, na, just add equation 1 and 2. Equation 1 plus 2 कर दो, अपने आप हो जाएगा वो. So you get 2b is equal to 2m minus delta m. This is the easiest way of doing this. So your delta m is becoming 2mg minus 2 times buoyant force divided by g. That's it. This is the easiest way of solving. This is the amount of mass you have to remove. Okay, so that's question number 19. Okay. Next we'll do 20. So just review this part if you like. So this is about upthrust and also about resistive force, what is called air resistance. Okay. So that is given by this. Okay. So if the balloon is going up at V, the resistive force is downwards, alpha V in magnitude. If the balloon is going down with a speed V prime, let's say, then the resistive force is alpha V prime but upwards. Remember, when in a diagram you're already showing the direction of the vector, you should not put the magnitude of a vector with a minus sign in the equation. That's a very bad mistake to make. In these equations, these are all magnitudes of vectors. The direction is already shown by the arrow's direction. So don't put a double negative. That arrow is also in the correct direction, but then you add a minus sign in the magnitude. That's incorrect. Okay, now your question 20 is also somewhat similar. It's using the concept of buoyant force. So in question 20, what is happening is you're taking a airtight box kind of thing, plastic box, and assume that it's kind of, or it can be a solid, I mean, it's, you're going to fill sand inside it. So assume that it's an airtight box. So initially it is empty from inside, and you put it under water. So as a result of that, it's accelerating upwards at g by 6. Now when it's underwater like this, the forces acting on it are buoyant force and its own weight, mg. So here m is the mass of the plastic box. Okay. Whereas buoyant force is density of water into volume into g, where v is the volume of the box, whereas this thing is density of water. So we won't need the values or anything, we just need to understand like this. Okay, now second time what you're doing is, so before that your equation here is becoming that buoyant force minus the weight is mass into acceleration. It's accelerating upwards. Okay, now the second situation is that you are filling some sand inside the box so that it now accelerates downward at g by 6. So this box is still underwater. Okay, but you have filled some sand inside it now. Okay, so we filled some mud or sand or whatever. Okay, so this time the total weight is becoming m plus m prime, let's say, into g, where m prime is the mass of sand added. Okay, in sand, but the buoyant force doesn't change because the volume of the box has not changed. So as a result of the additional mass, is now having a downward acceleration of same magnitude g by 6. So this time this one, so it's a easier question because there's no resistive force here, it's just this. Okay, so this time you can see that this is the total weight, it's exceeding the buoyant force by a factor of mass into E only. So this is your second equation. Now you want to find out the value of m prime. So first you get rid of buoyant force, so that you can do by adding adding the two equations. So equation 1 plus 2 अगर आप कर देते हो, so you will get m prime g on the left hand side, because mg minus mg will cancel, b minus b will cancel, and you're left with m prime g. On the right hand side you will get 2m plus m prime into e, and then in this substitute a as g by 6. So that's it, we're done. So m prime will become 2m plus m prime, the whole thing by 6. So you'll get 6 minus 1, 5m prime is equal to 2m. So the mass of sand added is 0.4 times the mass of the box. This would achieve this situation. Yeah, and also the the worksheet 7 and 8 that I've sent now, the combined 7 and 8 worksheet, make sure you complete that after HC Verma. This thing, after HC Verma, Newton's laws of motion, completing all the questions, especially all the system of police questions and the last few questions and all. Yeah, we'll discuss. Okay, so 20th is done. Now what is next? 23rd, is it? Yeah, 23rd. Okay, so masses were how much? 300 and 600 grams, and the larger mass is stopped after 2 seconds. Okay, so see, this type of problem becomes your application of kinematics. This is also very important. Okay, so it has a certain part of the thing which you have to solve by Newton's laws, but then the rest of it you have to also understand the kinematics of the situation. Okay, so what is happening is that we have set off the system from rest with the string taut, like this. Okay, so this M2 is 600 grams, this M1 is 300 grams. Now this is where it started from at t equal to 0, where both the blocks were at rest, but the thread was taut. So the moment you release it, the thread develops a tension. Okay, and the simple Atwood machine, so this goes up with A, this comes down with A. So you have the standard equations. By now, if you're used to it, you'll remember that A just becomes M2 minus M1 upon M2 plus M1 into G. You should have solved this so many times that this becomes natural for you, because you have M2G minus T is equal to M2A, and T minus M1G is equal to M1A. So you know how to solve these two equations. You just add them. That gives you. So in this case, that is G by 3. This is the acceleration of the system. Okay. Now from here, what is happening, that after 2 seconds, let's say this block is here and this block is here. So these have velocities like this at t equal to 2 seconds. Okay. So velocity at t equal to 2 seconds is just at, because it started from rest. So it is 2 by 3 g. Okay, but in meters per second, right? So you take this as 9.8 by 3. This is 2 into 9.8 by 3 meters per second. Okay, now what you are doing is, that's the 23rd question, that at t equal to 2 seconds, okay, we hold the block M2, okay, and let M1 move naturally. Okay, so we have to find out after how much time will the thread tighten. Okay, so let's understand this visually first. What we are doing is, so you can say that at the moment okay, so let's say this is the time 2 minus some very small amount of time delta t. So this was going down with that speed. Okay, this one was going up with that speed. Okay, and the string was having tension. So they were both having acceleration like this. But now what we are doing is we are catching hold of this block. So we are just holding it in the palm of our hands. So suddenly we applied some force on this, which is balancing its weight. So its acceleration becomes zero, its velocity becomes zero. So the tension in the string becomes zero. Okay, so this is what is happening exactly at t equal to 2 seconds. Precisely at 2 seconds. This is just before 2 seconds. So here I am saying that delta t is very small, it's tending to zero. So just before I catch hold of it, the string is tight, and this is the situation. Okay, but just at the moment when I hold this, so at this moment the tension in the string becomes zero, the string slackens, and this already has an upward velocity, and that upward velocity was what, 2g/3. So when you look at the free body diagram of the block M1, there's now only one force acting on it, and that is equal to what? That is the weight of the body. So from t equal to 2 seconds onwards, okay, M1's motion is a vertical projection okay under gravity. Its acceleration is g. Okay, so this is what we have to understand, because the string has become slack. Okay, so tension is zero. So M1 का मोशन कैसा हो रहा है? M1 पे एक ही फोर्स है, वेट. So it has a downward acceleration of g. Okay, so at t equal to 2 seconds, it has an initial velocity upwards now, which is 2g/3, but a downward acceleration of g. So in general, after some time, if it's here, this time is 2 plus some further time. So it is so its velocity is changed to some v, and its displacement is s. So this v is basically what it is, ut minus u minus gt, and the displacement is ut minus half gt square. Okay. So at t prime, let's say, equal to 2 plus t seconds, the velocity of this is 2g/3 minus gt, and the displacement of this is equal to this. Okay, so now think what will happen. This block will first, so you are holding the other block stationary, so this block is held in place, okay, but this is set off with that initial velocity at t equal to 2 seconds. So this goes up to some maximum height, comes to rest, then comes down, and on its way down now, when it reaches here, what happens? The string again tightens. So this happens at some time, that's when the string tightens. So the string becomes taut again when M1 descends and comes back to its position at t equal to 2 seconds. Okay, so that will be how much time? That will be 2u/g, total time of flight. So that is 2 into 2/3g divided by g, so 4/3 seconds. So actually, it will reach here at a time of 2 plus 2/3 seconds, and then it will be back here at a time of 2 plus 4 by 3 seconds. Okay, and that's when the string will tighten again. So that should be your answer. So the time at that point of time, or the value of t will be 2 seconds plus 4 by 3. This is the interval of time. You can say this is the delta time in going up and coming down. So as per your stopwatch, the time will be 2 seconds plus that interval of time. Okay, so the reading of time on your stopwatch will be 2 plus that delta t. So it will be 2 plus 4 by 3. So that is 10 by 3 or 3.33 seconds. This is the time at which, okay, it returns back to where it started from. So the string just about becomes tight again. So between 2 and 3.33 seconds, your string is loose, and the other block M2 is just being held in place while M1 is going up, decelerating, reaching the highest point, then coming down, accelerating, and like that. So they are asking for the time elapsed till that this thing is. So the time elapsed is delta t. So that's this time only, 4 by 3 seconds. Okay, so no, wait. This is a different question. Okay, this is not this question. Here we are holding this block, but in the HC Verma question, they are not holding the second block. They are just stopping it and then releasing it. So that's a different thing altogether. Okay. So it is stopped for a moment and then released. So now the second block is also moving. So this is a different question. Okay. This is not question 23. This is another question where what is happening is that we hold the block M2. So I'm assuming it's being held continuously. So in that case, the time taken before the string will become tight again will be this much. It will be 4 by 3 seconds. Okay. But the HC Verma question is slightly different. Instead of holding that block, you're releasing the other block also. So that will give you a different situation because that starts moving also now. So in HC Verma's 23rd question, what is happening is the block M2 is stopped momentarily. That is just for an instant. Okay. And then released at t equal to 2 seconds. So what is happening in this case is that just before t equal to 2 seconds, t equal to 2 minus some very small interval of time, this is having an upward velocity, this is having a downward velocity, the string is having tension, and this is having an upward acceleration, this is having a downward acceleration. So that velocity we had seen was 2g by 3 because that acceleration was g by 3. Okay. Now what is happening at the moment t equal to 2 seconds, this one is stopped. So its velocity suddenly becomes 0. Okay. Whereas this one is continuing on it on the basis of its momentum. So the string slackens. Okay, so the tension becomes 0. Okay, but thereafter what is happening? This is release. So this starts falling. Okay, So now at some new value of time, so here this time is, let us say, t plus some delta t. So what has happened that this block has made a displacement s2 is half g into delta t square because it's in free fall, whereas this block has made an upward displacement s1, and that will be your u times delta t minus half g delta t square. Because the moment this happens now you stop it and then release it immediately. Okay, so what is happening, m2 is in free fall, whereas m1, because the tension has become zero, so m1 is having a vertical projection. Okay, so that's why this displacement will be like this. Okay, so s1, when we write it as an equation, s1 will be 2 by 3 g delta t minus half g delta t square, and s2 will be half g delta t square. Okay, now the question is, when will the string slacken again? So see, upward displacement of m1 is making the string length decrease from this side, downward displacement s2 is making it increase. So the string will tighten again when this downward displacement is equal to this upward displacement. Okay, so what is happening is that initially s1 is increasing at a faster rate compared to s2 coming down. Why? Because this started from rest, this started with initial velocity. So okay, because started with the initial velocity upward, but this started from rest. Okay, so the string is slackening. Okay, but after some time s2 is coming down faster than s1 going up, because this is an accelerated motion, this is a decelerated motion. Okay, so at some time interval delta t, or basically the total time is 2 plus delta t, s2 will catch up with s1. So that is when the string will become taut again. Okay, so the upward displacement, the downward displacement of this one, half gt square, will become exactly equal to the upward displacement of this one, and that is when the string will tighten again. So half plus half, that is 1 g delta t square will become u delta t. Okay, so of course one time is delta t equal to 0, but we won't take that because that's the initial one. The other solution of this is that delta t is g divided by u. So that is g divided by, sorry, it's the other way around, u divided by g. So that is, so that is 2 by 3 seconds later. So there are two separate scenarios. Okay, you should not solve blindly, you should understand the scenario. Okay, if you have solved this correctly, Aman, then you should tell me that I have solved a different thing. I have solved a situation which is also another question. It can be a question like this also, which you should know, that इसको अगर हम रोक के रख रहे हैं continuously, then this block is first going up and then coming down here, and then the string is tightening. But if we just stop this momentarily and release it, that's what we are doing in this situation. Then from 2 seconds onwards, this goes into free fall starting from rest, and this has a vertically decelerated motion and then comes down, something like this. So when will the string tighten? When S1 equals S2, so that the total thread length becomes equal to the actual length of the thread. I mean, the total, length of the thread stretched out between block to block is the actual length of the thread. So the thread is not slack at all, it's tight. Okay, so you understand this. Make sure you're clear with what's happening in this question. Okay. So anything else from HC Verma? Any other question? Just drop me a message if you have any other doubt in HC Verma. Then we'll come to the objective 2. Yeah, question number 4. Okay. Okay, I'll explain this to you. Just give me. And Jenny, question number 38. Okay, I'll see that also. Okay, so next is that question from the objective type 2. It's a graph based question, so I'll just show you what the question is trying to say. Then it's very clear and it's very easy after that. So what is happening is that body is supposedly moving in straight line motion, and its x coordinate or its displacement along the x-axis, whatever, as a function of time. So this is the position time graph or the displacement time graph, whatever we choose to call it. Okay, for the body as a function of time. So it's like, it's specifically a straight line in certain parts, and specifically it is curved in certain other parts. So it's like this here, but then it's becoming a curved part. Okay, going something like this. It doesn't matter how, where is going and all that. The important thing is it's then it's a straight line again, and then again it's curved like this. Okay, so you can see that velocity is dx by dt, so it is slope of tangent. Okay, so in this part, here to here, you can see a to b, what is happening, you can see velocity is constant, so that means acceleration is zero, so that means the net force on the body is zero. Okay, whereas between b and c, you can see that the velocity is, the slope is changing, so there's acceleration. So b to c, you can see that, you can actually see that the slope is increasing. No, because it might go from a slope of, like, let's say -5 to a slope of -4, to some stage the slope of 0, then a slope of, let's say, 1, then a slope of 2. So all the time you can see the slope is increasing, so acceleration is, so v is increasing, so acceleration is positive. Okay, then again c to d, so like that basically you can understand that c to d and a to b, these are the two parts where the velocity is constant, so acceleration is zero, so force is zero. Okay, so a to b and c to d, those are the two parts where velocity is constant, so acceleration is zero, whereas the other parts there is some rate of change of slope. Here, now here you can see it's opposite, the velocity is decreasing, so this has a negative acceleration, but this will have a positive acceleration. And then of course something pretty horrible is happening at this stage, because suddenly your acceleration is going from 0 to a very large value, so there might be a sudden impact kind of force. Here also your velocity is going from a sudden positive value to a sudden negative quantity, so in a very short duration of time, almost like a zero interval of time, there's a sudden change in velocity, in direction of velocity only. So that could be from some kind of a collision and impact, etc. Whereas here it's a continuous gradual kind of force. Okay, so that's that. Let's come to that monkey problem, 38th one. Okay, 33 also. 33 तो बेटा क्लास में कराया हुआ प्रॉब्लम है आपको. This is question I've done in class. If you go through the examples I had done earlier when we were understanding the concept of pseudo force, no, you will see that. Okay. So this is m. This is m prime. This is m. This angle is theta, and this is a smooth surface. Now, what you are assuming is that this is moving as a system without any slipping. Okay, so in the non-inertial frame, that block should be at rest. Okay, so if you look at the FBD of the small block m relative to, or you can say in the frame of the wedge m prime. So in that wedge's frame, it should be at rest. Okay, its relative acceleration should be zero. Okay, so the forces acting on it are pseudo force, weight, and normal reaction. And over here, this angle will become theta, and this angle will be theta. So you'll get the condition that A is equal to g tan theta. ये आ जाएगा आपको. Okay. Now once you understood A is g tan theta, now what you do is m prime that is the wedge, plus M, that is the block, they move together. They are moving together. So make a combined FBD. Okay. So this thing plus this thing is moving with this acceleration A, which we just got from here, under the action of only one horizontal force. So this tension should be equal to M prime plus M into A. So substitute this over here. So this is your equation 2. And now you have to just find out how much mass you should attach here, so that, so if this is going with A like this is coming down with A. Okay. So there's this tension, and there's this one's mass. So for the third block, this capital Ng and T should ensure that it has this. So capital Mg minus T should be equal to capital Ma. So this is your third equation. So now solving this and this, you can see that 2 plus 3 kar do. So you have capital Mg is equal to M prime plus small m plus capital M E. And now substitute A as G tan theta. Okay, so there you are. So you'll have, okay, so capital M into 1 minus tan theta is equal to M prime plus M tan theta. So from this you find out M. So we have done a numerical version of this question, okay, where theta was I think 37 or 30 or something like that. Okay. But this is a very important type of question to understand the application of pseudo force. That's why I've repeated it over here, even though we did it earlier. Yes, Nikita, question 24. Okay. Yeah, 24 is also an important kind of thing to understand. Okay, so what we are doing is we are applying one external force from here of, how much is it, 20 newtons. Okay, and that is creating some tension T1 in this thread. Okay, so that T1 will become 20 newtons because it's a massless thread. So whatever force we apply, that becomes the tension. Okay, then from here we are applying the force F2, which is 22 newtons, correct? Oh, sorry, 32 newtons. So उसके वजह से ये वाले thread में the tension is that much. The tension is 32 newtons. F2 is equal to T2. Here F1 is equal to T1. Okay, so now you look at this whole body. On this body of mass m, there is T2 of 32 newtons, no friction on the floor. So the net force horizontally is T2 minus T1. So this develops a horizontal acceleration A, let's say. So that A is T2 minus T1 by mass, or that is F2 minus F1 by mass, or in this case it is 12 newtons by whatever mass of the body. Okay. Now we want to find the tension within the rod. Now this is like a rod. Now this has some internal tension also, and we want to find the tension in this cross section, which is dividing this in ratio of 1 is to 2. This is 10 centimeters, this is 20 centimeters. Okay. So if we are calling this rod AB, and this point is some P in between. Now next what you do is you make free body diagram of the section AP, or you can make the free body diagram of the section PB of the rod. This. So this is the best way to calculate the tension at that point. Okay. So if you make the free body diagram of this section, यहाँ पे ये वाला half उसको pull कर रहा है with some tension TP, which I want to find out. But from this side there is the tension T1, which I know is 20 newtons, and this is having the acceleration A, which I know is 12 by m, whatever that mass is. Now the question is, what is the mass of this part? Okay. This part has a mass which we need to calculate. Okay. Similarly, this one is like this. If this is this, so this is 20 centimeters long. This is 10 centimeters long. Okay. Now इस पे ये side से we know the amount of force which is acting. It is 32 newtons. But this is equal and opposite of this. So this and this are an action reaction pair. Now you can see this and this are action reaction pair. Okay. And this is having that acceleration of 12 by m. So again the thing is we need to know the mass of PB. So that we can write like this, that the mass of the section AP is the mass per unit length into the length of that section. So it's m by 3. And the mass of this section PB is again mass per unit length. It's a uniform rod, we'll assume, into the length of that section. So it's 2m by 3. So actually we need only one of these two. I've just shown you for demonstration. So either of the two will work out. So for this one, we have the equation Tp minus T1 is mass of this section into A. So the unknown tension minus 20 will become m by 3. That's the mass of this section, and the acceleration was 12 by m. Okay. Or we can use this one's equation. So this will only give me the tension. Okay. So that's why I'm saying it's or. We don't need to use both. So T2 minus Tp is the mass of this section into acceleration. So 32 minus this unknown tension should be 2m by 3 into 12 by m. So whichever of the two equations we use, we'll get the same result, that this is 24 newtons. That will be that tension. Okay, so if you recall the early few lectures for tension we had discussed, tension in a heavy rope, how we had seen it varies linearly in this kind of situation. Okay, this is how we'll. Okay, good. So let's come to that question. Next one, that 38 something, right? So now you'll have to really excuse my very poor drawing skills. Okay. There's no difference between my drawing of a human being and a monkey, except for the fact that the monkey has some tail. So of course the tail will get stretched out actually. So it will be more like this. So it's a vertically stretched out tail. So the diagram is more like this. Anyway, so the question is saying that A has a mass of 5 kg and 2 kg respectively. So now A's tail can tolerate a maximum tension of 30 newtons. So A's tail, it can have a maximum tension of 30 newtons. More than 30 newtons, poor fellow's tail will break. Okay. So what force should apply on the rope in order for the to carry the monkey B with it? Okay. So basically, see now what is happening if A is, you know, as it holds on to this rope. So A अगर rope पे downward force F लगा रहा है, okay, the force on the rope by A, okay, then what is happening in A's free body diagram? The forces acting on him will be equal and opposite tension in the rope. Okay, so whatever force A is pulling the rope down by, that will become the tension in the rope. So that will act on A. Okay, and then let's say A's tail is experiencing some tension. So this is T prime. So T prime is the tension in A's tail, whereas T is the tension in the rope. Okay, so then this one below, and of course there's A's weight. Okay, not to forget, उसका खुद का weight है. Okay. Now this one will experience T prime above. This is B. Okay, and weight. Now assuming that this force is large, both of them will have a common acceleration A upwards, which we can also understand by just making a combined free body diagram, that A plus B, if they are going up at a common acceleration A, is because the string above is applying a tension which is equal to the force that A was applying, and their combined weight is like this. So whether we write the individual equations for A and B, everything is in ground frame here, so don't worry about non-inertial frame. So whether we write the individual equations, which for this guy will be, for this one will be T minus weight minus T prime is equal to mass into acceleration, and for this guy it will be T prime, T prime. So whether it is this or, so we can take these two equations or we write a single equation for this one. It's one and the same thing, that t minus you will get this equation also from these two by adding these two also. Equation 1 plus 2 you will get. Okay, but now the thing is that in this equation we want that t prime's maximum value is 30 newtons. Okay, so that is showing you that A's maximum possible value is how much? It is 30 minus 2g divided by mass of B, which is 2. So this A from here is T prime minus weight divided by mass. So इसका जो maximum value है वो इतना है. So it is 15 minus 10, okay, of 5 meters per second square. Because if the acceleration of the system is more than 5 meters per second square, then the tension um, in the tail of A will become more than 30 newtons, and that is not acceptable. So then for this acceleration, how much is the tension, which is the force is applying? So for that you come to the earlier equation, or you go with this. You can see that this, okay. So that is 5 plus 2 into 10 plus A. This is the amount of force is applying. So the maximum force he can apply will become 5 plus 2, that is 7, into G plus A's maximum possible value. So A's maximum possible value is 5. So when he applies this maximum force of 7 into 10 plus 5, or 105 newtons, in that situation what will happen is that, so for F equal to F max 105 newtons, okay, the acceleration will be that maximum acceleration of 5 meters per second square, and the tension in his tail P prime will become its maximum value, which is 30 newtons. Okay, so in case F is greater than this F max, okay, T prime will tend to be greater than 30 newtons, but that's not possible, so the tail will break. Whereas if F is less than F max, it's okay, the acceleration will be less than 5, but T prime will also be less than 30, so there's no problem with it. There's no difficulty here, the tail will not break. So this is acceptable, but this situation is unacceptable. So he must not apply a force of more than 105 newtons. Have you understood this, people? Okay. And of course, the other limit is that, he doesn't want them both to fall. They are both going upwards. So lower limit kya hai? When acceleration is 0. So the lower limit of that force is when acceleration is 0. So in this, on the other hand, you put that A should be greater than equal to 0. So therefore, for A to be 0, the tension just is to be equal to, tension or the force is applying is equal to the combined weight. So that's 70 newtons. And in this case, what will happen for this particular case, the tension in his tail, you'll see will be just the weight of this guy. So it will be only 20 newtons. So it's very much in the safe zone. So to be moving up with some acceleration, I mean, just to be moving up, whether the acceleration is 0 or greater than 0, but the tail is secure, it's not breaking. The range of force is between this minimum value, which is written in green, 70 newtons, and this maximum value, which is corresponding to the maximum tension T prime of 30 newtons. So that is the concept of this question. Hope that is clear. Okay. Okay, now I'll just randomly pick out one question that I want to discuss, since it will be the last question for today. Uh, this question is out of your worksheet 7. Okay. Now for the upcoming test, like if you finish HC Verma and the questions we've done in class in the last couple of lectures, it's more than enough for your preparation. So don't worry too much about the worksheet 7 and 8 for just now. Okay. You take a week to complete it, it's fine. Now, this kind of a block is there. It's 37 degrees. Okay. This is lying on a frictionless surface. Okay. And there is another block on this. Okay. And this thread is now attached to a fixed wall like this. Okay. So this is a smooth surface. This thing is a mass, let's say capital M. This thing is a mass small m. Okay. Massless pulley, and this is also smooth and all that. So we have to find the accelerations. Okay. So this is where you have to understand that uniform tension acting everywhere in magnitude. Now, because of this horizontal tension, what is happening? This block is moving with an acceleration A like this with respect to ground. Okay. And then what is happening? This one is moving with an acceleration like this, but this is relative to the wedge. Okay. Now thread length will show you that this section is of the length is, let's say, X, and this section of the length is, let's say, Z. Okay. So X plus Z is constant. So the rate at which X is increasing should be the rate at which Z is decreasing. It should be 0. Yeah? So this is showing you that A prime will be equal to A. This is your constraint relation. But remember, A prime is relative to the wedge. Okay. So the easy thing here to do will be the free body diagram of small m in the non-inertial frame of the wedge. Okay. So in that frame, now if we count the forces acting on this, there will be a horizontal pseudo force. Okay. Ma. There will be vertical weight mg, and there will be tension in this direction t. Okay. And this one will have an acceleration in this direction which is equal to A in magnitude. Yes, Kevin, that equation is correct. Okay. So इसके लिए equation क्या हो जाएगा? So if this angle is theta, so over here you can see that this angle will also be theta. So ma cos theta plus mg sin theta minus t is equal to ma prime. This is our second equation. Okay. But in this, of course, you will substitute a prime equal to a. And also, I forgot the normal reaction. So there is some normal reaction like this. Okay. So the normal reaction plus sin theta is balancing mg cos theta. So that is our third equation. Okay. So if you write these equations numerically, they'll become like this. This one will become cos 37, so 0.8 MA plus 0.6 mg minus T is equal to MA, because you are substituting A prime is equal to A. Okay, so this is one equation, and this is becoming that N is equal to 0.8 mg minus 0.6 mA. This is the other equation. Okay, and I'll tell you why we need this equation, because we need for the free body diagram of the wedge. Now for the wedge, we make the free body diagram in inertial frame. Okay, so in inertial frame, the number of forces acting on the wedge, which becomes important, So there is this tension, there is this tension, okay, and not to forget, there is this normal reaction like this. Okay, these are the interactive forces with this thing. Of course, there is its own weight and some normal reaction that the ground is applying. So if you just organize this in an FBD, tension, tension, this angle is theta, okay, and this normal reaction will be like this. Okay, it's perpendicular to this one, so this angle is theta. Okay, and of course the vertical forces of weight and the normal reaction from the ground. Now in the ground frame, this guy is having an acceleration A like this, so its equation will become what? Its equation will become T minus T cos theta. Also there's a N, so plus N sine theta is equal to capital MA. So substitute the values, so you'll have T into 1 minus zero point 0.8, okay, plus 0.6 N is equal to capital MA. So this becomes your, okay. So these are your equations. I've already incorporated equation 1, which was that A prime is equal to A. So you'll need to just solve equation 2, 3 and 4. So you eliminate N first by substituting that here, and then get the value of T from this, put it in equation 2, and you will get the acceleration A. So this is like one of the more elaborate questions. It's the same set of concepts that we've been discussing, but as you can see, the whole solution is more elaborate. This is, I think, in your worksheet number 8, question number 5. One of you requested this for the doubts also today, so I have solved this. So Jenny, you understood ना हॉरिजॉन्टल एक्सलेशन क्यों है? बिकॉज ये ब्लॉक भी पुश कर रहा है नॉर्मल रिएक्शन से, और ये स्ट्रिंग भी यहाँ से पुल कर रहा है ना. Okay, so this is a more advanced type of question. These type of questions will take you a bit more practice, so maybe one more week. Okay, but at least up to HC Verma type of questions you should be able to prepare in by end of this week, and do very well in the test coming up. All right people, that's it for today then. Okay, I will be logging off now. So wish you all the best, and keep sending me any doubts and questions you have on WhatsApp. I will reply sooner or later. I'll try to reply in the same day as much as possible. Okay, all the best. Okay guys, bye then. All the best again.